here today to learn about figure drawing. So that just means drawing human bodies in like a realistic way. And we're going to learn a little bit about how to draw human bodies in different poses too. It's easy once you learn how to draw bodies just to draw them straight on, standing, facing the camera. But it gets a little more complicated when you want them to be moving and actually doing things. So that is what we are going to get into today. So the focus of today's video is going to be proportion. Artists use proportion to help them draw more realistically. So what is proportion? Proportion just basically means the correct relationship in size between two things. In other words, if something is proportional, that means everything is the right size. If it's disproportional, that means one part is either too big or too small for the rest of it. Take Leonardo da Vinci's painting The Mona Lisa, for example. The eyes are the right size for the head is the right size for the body, everything looks real and believable. Now, let's look at Colombian artist Fernando Botero's version of the Mona Lisa. The head is too big for the body, the eyes are too small for the head. The whole portrait is just very disproportional and not very true to life. Fernando was very famous for exaggerating proportion, and he would often take famous paintings like this one and repaint them, but in a much more unrealistic way. Many artists use a canon of proportion, which basically just means they follow a mathematical equation to make the perfect proportions for a human body in their art. The ancient Egyptians were some of the first artists to use a canon of proportion of their own in their artwork, which is why most of their human figures look so similar. Egyptians believed that their specific canon of proportion created the perfect or ideal human body. Most of their figure drawings centered around their gods or their kings and queens, so drawing with the Egyptian canon of proportion didn't always mean the drawings would look like a real human. It was more like the rules to follow to draw the most perfectly beautiful body type, which of course they believed a god or ruler would have. Of course, today we realize that everyone's bodies are different, and we celebrate that no one body is perfect or ideal or more beautiful than the rest. Many artists still use a canon of proportions today to help start a drawing of a realistic body, but then they alter it to make it more true to life. Like, for example, maybe making the torso longer or the legs shorter, just depending on the figure that they're actually drawing. This here is the average canon of proportion that many artists follow today. To make it easy, you can measure the rest of the body just by the size of the head. So the average height of a man and woman would be like stacking 7.5 of their own heads on top of each other. I don't want to envision what half a head looks like. An average preteen would be like 6.5 of her own heads stacked on top of each other. A child would be about 6, and an infant would be about 4 heads high. These type of charts also help draw proportional limbs and body features. The average male arm length is about 3 heads. 1, 2, 3. The average woman leg length is about 3.5 heads long. 1, 2, 3.5. Using this chart helps to draw the general size of the human body, but always make sure to personalize your drawing as needed to make it more true to life. So now that we have a basic understanding of proportion, let's get to drawing. Most artists draw a sort of sketchy skeleton to capture the figure pose before going in and drawing all the little details, which this is sometimes called an action drawing. Let me show you what I mean. I printed off some drawings of a few athletes in action. You can follow along by either printing off a person in action like I did with those athletes, or if you don't have a printer, you can go find like an old newspaper or magazine, and if you can find a person in there in action doing something, you can draw over top of that as we practice, as long as you have permission from, whoever owns the magazine. Or you could open up your photo app, and usually there's an editing option, and you can just draw right over top of the picture, and you can practice that way. So the first step to drawing is understanding where the joints are. Joints are the part of your body that help your bones move. Your elbow is a joint, your shoulder, knee, ankle, waist, neck, hips. These are where your body bends. If you're drawing anything that bends anywhere other than these joints, your figure needs to go see a doctor. So now that you know the joints to look for, you can start drawing. We'll start with a circle for the head, which is moved by the neck. Again, you can draw right on top of your character. Now, before I do my next line, I always look for the next joint, which would be the shoulders here. So from there, I can use a triangle shape to make the chest area. My next joint would be the waist. There's not actually a bone joint there, but that's where your body does move. And then from there, you can do a little cereal bowl shape for the pelvic area. My next two joints are going to be the hips. And again, I'm always looking for the next joint before doing my bones. So my next joint would be the knees, and now I can connect them with the thigh. The next joint would be our ankle, and I can connect that with the shin. And then lastly, you have your foot, and usually it's just going to be like a square shape for now. Up here, our next joint is going to be your elbow. So try and find that on your picture, and you can connect that with the upper arm. Next joint is the wrist. This one's kind of hidden. You can just imagine it. Connect that to your elbow. And then same thing, I just kind of do like squares for the hands before we add the details in. So I'm going to show you that in a couple different poses just so you can get the hang of it. So again, always start off locating your joint. So there's my head, and of course it's connected to the neck joint. And then the neck is going to be connected to your shoulders. So even though he's got his pads on, I know his shoulders are right about there. So I can connect them with my triangle that goes down to the waist. And there we'll draw our joint too. Remember, at the waist, we draw that little cereal bowl. I'm going to follow the shape that he's in. And then we have our hip bones. So here's his one, and then in this picture, his other hip bone's kind of hidden down there. The next joint we're going to lead to is going to be your knee. So here's one knee, and the other knee, it's hard to tell with what's going on here, but I'm thinking it's all the way down here because that's where I see his leg bending, and your legs bend at your joint. So now I can connect the knees to the hip bone, and then next is my ankle joint, and I can connect that now to the knee, and then just do some squares for your feet. Up here again, I'm going to locate the elbows and connect those to my shoulder. Locate your wrists and connect those to your elbow, and finish off with your squares. Once you practice on top of a picture a few times, you'll start to get the hang of locating each joint and body part, and soon you'll be able to draw the action drawing just by looking at a figure. Remember to only bend at the joints and be careful of proportion. If something's looking a little bit weird, reference our proportion chart from earlier and make sure all the limbs and body parts are proportional to the size of the head. The key to action drawing is not to focus too much on making it perfect. You just want to locate the joints, the shapes, and like the general pose. You're not trying to draw a perfectly anatomical skeleton. So, to get you drawing quickly and to stop you from overthinking it, we are going to have a figure drawing speed challenge. With the help of some special models, you are going to have 10 seconds to draw each of the poses that they're in with the techniques you just learned. So finding the joints, finding the shapes of the body. Try not to pause the video. You can always come back later and finish a drawing you didn't finish. Just draw fast until you're out of time, and then start the next pose once it comes on the screen. So get out a blank paper and a pencil and get ready. You'll have 10 seconds to draw the pose once the model gets in position. Ready? Let's go.
Look it like breeze.
Ooh, here, get one. Ooh, here, what? Ooh, here, get one. Yeah. Ooh, here, get one. Ooh, here, what? Ooh, here, get one.
Look it like breeze.
Ooh, here, get one. Ooh, here, what? Ooh, here, get one. Yeah. Ooh, here, 慣れた時のままに問いかけたことのものがまだ無駄何だって怖いよ顔をやって怖いよ
Look at like
Here, there was here, here, there was here, there was here, there was
look at like breathe. Look at like
And we're done! I hope you have a weird little stick figure dance party on your paper now like I do. So now that you know how to capture a pose, let's finish it off by fleshing out the rest of the body, which literally just means to add the flesh to your stick figure. I feel like there was a less gross way to go about saying that, but it's been said. When you're drawing on the rest of the body, just remember that the muscles meet the joints, which then pull on the joints, allowing your body to move. So I tend to flesh out my stick figure by drawing joint to joint. Choose one of your action drawings and let's get started. I like to start with the head, giving it an egg-like shape and rounding out the jawline. Around the neck joint, we'll draw 2 straight lines to make the neck. And notice it slowly curves into the neck. It's not a sharp corner. There's a muscle that goes around the shoulder and then another longer one that meets at the elbow. From there, you have the forearm that starts from the elbow and gets thinner around the wrist. Hands, I tend to just start out with a box shape and sketch in the small lines for the fingers. Details come later. From the shoulders, we'll go to the waist. Many body shapes get thinner at the waist and go out for the hips, but not all of them do, so just always remember to reference the figure you're drawing from. Next, we'll go around the hip bones and down to the knee with one large muscle. From the knees to the ankles, you have your calf muscle, so don't forget to make it wider before thinning it out for the ankle. And lastly, we have the feet. It often depends on the angle, but usually feet are a bit of a triangle shape. And that is the basics of figure drawing. I encourage you to try and flesh out as many of the figures as you can. Practice makes perfect. Of course, you'll want to add clothing and details, and that'll vary between each drawing. Just always remember to start off by drawing lightly so that you can erase easily if need be. Remember also to start with drawing the big details first, like the basic clothing shape, hairstyles, and all of that, before moving on to smaller details like zippers, logos, accessories, whatever. If you start off with so many intricate, tiny details, you'll never want to erase all that work if you realize that one of the big details is out of place. So now you should have a basic human figure. With this technique, you can draw a human figure in any position. I know it can be annoying at first to have to draw all the stick figures and all the joints and all of that, but professional artists still do this. They build a little bit of a skeleton first and then go in and flesh it out. But also, as you get better and more used to doing this and you're practicing, it becomes more natural, and sometimes you're able just to draw a figure without doing all that prep work. But if you want to draw realistically, these are the steps you need to take to learn. So good luck with your figure drawing, everybody, and have fun practicing. Thank you for watching.